Should teaching businesses be worried about AI taking over in 2025?
So there are definitely a lot of risks when it comes to relying on AI in education. I personally think AI is the great leveler when it comes to educational inequality. Welcome to the Business of Teaching podcast. This is the podcast where we discuss what it takes to run a teaching business in today's world. Now, as always, Riley, do you want to give us an update on ArcPlatforms for this week?
Yeah, so there's one thing that's noteworthy would be the mobile app. I made a few updates to that to speed it up in load times when initially opening the app to make it more usable.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, obviously the goal is to end up to make sure that thing is as close to WhatsApp in terms of speed and usability as possible, and I think we're definitely on the path to get there 100%.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so now let's get into the content of today's episode. Do you want to bring up the topic for today, Riley?
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about ethical and business implications of AI in teaching businesses.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you some questions today and I'll see how you answer them.
Fantastic. Well, let's jump into it.
Okay, first question. Should teaching businesses be worried about AI taking over in 2025?
I think for teaching businesses, it's a sort of double-edged sword in terms of whether they should be worried about AI taking over or not. So I think there is an argument where, especially for a lot of the really good students, so we're talking the top maybe 10, 15, 20 percentile of students, they work really well autonomously, right? A lot of the times, like originally or right now or before AI, they'd be using textbooks, or they could just learn by themselves or just learn by watching YouTube videos. I think a lot of these students, and maybe a few more, maybe 5-10% of these students, of other students who are not as autonomous, I think they will really thrive when it comes to AI. So, originally they might be going through a textbook or going through some textbook solutions and really sort of spending a lot of time working out how to solve a specific question. Maybe in 2015 they were doing that. But these days, the same types of students, they could just send that photo or take a screenshot of that image of that problem and then send it into some sort of LLM, and voila, they've got an answer, a worked solution that they can then work through. And I think, that's going to be at the top level. These students are probably not going to really use that much tutoring anymore. Or at least if they are using tutoring, they would need a lot less. Yeah, especially for the more objective subjects like maths and science. But then there's also an argument that these exact types of students that are very autonomous and sort of work by themselves and able to solve things through their own means, they're not really doing tutoring these days anyway, right? So, there's that element to it as well. So then we have the vast majority of other students who, they have a textbook available for them. Yes, they can look at any single YouTube video with the best teachers online, but they still want someone in front of them to teach them, right? So these days in 2025 and even earlier, you could always search up and learn a course from, for instance, even Harvard has their computer science course just online available for free, right? If you're willing to learn and put in the energy, there's a lot of courses you can do and pay for that'll basically teach you everything autonomously if you really wanted to, yeah? And even while these students have access to this vast array of information, tutoring still exists, right? So, I think there's an element where it's still very difficult these days to replace, a human teacher. Especially in terms of like things like accountability, right? AI can't hold you accountable in 2025. And AI doesn't have the threat of disappointing it. I think people still treat AI like it's a robot, like it's a vending machine, right? I think that the vast majority of people would treat a vending machine compared to, a server at a shop very differently, right? Like with a vending machine, you see people poking around, trying to shake it, get some free stuff. But the vast majority of people wouldn't really do that to a human worker, for instance. Yeah, it's just a different way I think humans see a machine or something that's artificial, not real, versus a human being who can get disappointed in you, who can, tell your parents, who will then get disappointed in you, where an AI can't do that as of 2025.
Yeah, as I'm listening to this, I'm trying to think if you agree with this point. So it seems like the students are going to the AI to get their answer, but it doesn't seem like they're going to the AI to learn how to do something.
I mean, I think yes and no to answer your sort of question, because there are going to be a subset of students who they just want the answer, they just want to get to the end and sort of just move on, whether that be cheating or whether that be they're good at sort of reverse engineering a solution. But I think there are a lot of students out there who do ask the AI for questions and ask the AI to scaffold them in their learning, to sort of, not just tell them the answer, but tell them or give them a hint, for instance, to solve it, which is something that I know that when I was learning, I never had the ability to do that, right? So yeah, that's one sort of element to it. At the same time, I think in terms of going back to what I was talking about before, a human teacher has personality, right? They can inject a bit of fun in the sessions. There's, things that they can sort of make fun of with the student. They can joke around, or at least make a joke here and there. That's something that the AI struggles to do, right? And if the AI does, it's probably a little bit cringeworthy. Look, not to say that real human teachers aren't cringeworthy, but it's just a bit different when it's a AI versus a human. And I think lastly, just rapport, right? The ability to poke fun, the ability to reference real life scenarios, right? A lot of AI is built in the past. You're not really going to be bantering with an AI or, making fun of, them about their laugh or something like that. These are just normal human things that people do, especially teachers and tutors of all kinds. And I think a good example that I can think of is, if you go out on a fishing trip on the weekend, your teacher might ask you how that was and how you found it. Whereas if a computer asks you the same thing, it's very different. Yeah, it's just not the same. Yeah, and I think, yeah, at least for the time being, the short, maybe 5 years, we're probably not going to see too much difference in that. It's just, yeah, the AI is going to be very utilitarian, whereas a human is still someone who can help you, someone who can comfort you, when you're struggling or before a big test. And we're still a long ways away for an AI legitimately doing it at anywhere near the level a human can.
Right, so in 2025, the teaching businesses, tutors, they really don't have to worry about taking over just yet.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, look, there might be a little bit of a concern, but I don't think there's nothing to really worry about for the next 5 to 10 years, realistically.
It's a quick moving space. Could change.
Yeah. But that's as of 2025, at the start of 2025. We don't know what's going to happen at the end of 2025. Yeah, we don't know at all.
Right. So I'm going to ask you the next question. What are the risks of relying on AI too much in education?
So there are definitely a lot of risks when it comes to relying on AI in education. But I would say, in general, the pros outweigh the cons, right? But that's not to say that there are cons. One of which would be, for instance, bias, right? When it comes to AI is trained on data, and that data can be manipulated depending on where you get that AI from. So an example would be if you're using DeepSeek versus if you're using, Google's AI, it's different, right? Because one's Chinese, one's American, and they're going to be different things that, Chinese AI would want to prevent you seeing, for instance, and an American AI where there'd be things that they would prevent you from seeing. What you can see and what you can't see depends on the culture of whoever owns the AI at the end of the day. And there's political, concerns as well. So a lot of the AI is made to be as politically neutral as possible. But even when, this is done, there's still biases in the data of what that AI has. So for good or for bad, that's something that you need to consider, right? At the same time, there's a potential ability of hallucinations, right? AI has the ability to make things up. It has the ability to just have fake data. If it's not able to find it, an answer, it'll just make it up on the spot, which obviously isn't very good. And I think sort of students have to really consider that you need to have a sources first approach. So if there is some sort of issue, or if there is some sort of fact that is being sort of said, you do need to get to the source of it, so you're not just listening to an AI which could just make it up. Yeah. And I find if you ask very niche questions, very specific questions, and the AI isn't able to find an answer, yeah, it'll just make it up. It'll tell you, that you used to work at Google, for instance, if it can't find who you are, just randomly. Yeah. Another thing that I would consider is, relatively speaking, AI does have a lack of oversight. So what that means is just because an AI works today doesn't necessarily mean it'll work tomorrow or it'll work the day after. Like, the AI is constantly being tweaked. There's constantly being adaptations made to it. So even though, for instance, today it's good, it's non-biased, you never know what it's going to be in a year's time or in a few months' time. So we always have to be vigilant in terms of roughly how we're going to, approach it, and always take everything it says with a grain of salt. But, especially when it comes to learning, especially when it comes to just sort of figuring things out on a educational perspective, a lot of the times, it's not much worse than a regular teacher, right? Teachers have biases. Teachers sometimes might say things that are incorrect, right? Teachers have all the same problems, right? But because teachers are themselves, we sort of overlook that a bit. So I think, at the end of the day, like if you're a student sitting in class and the teacher says stuff, you should still take it with a little bit of a grain of salt as well, because people have their own idiosyncratic ideas, and that gets into their teaching as well. So
I think as a teacher as well, you have yourself, like you said, they are in the classroom, the student heard something that they said, and then the student can always use that against, any bad mark, anything that comes in their way in the future. They can definitely say, oh, well, the teacher said this. I think that's more of a help for the student than saying, oh, the AI said this at this point in time,
Yeah, and this is why I think it's sort of more of a hybrid environment these days, where, you might see something that the AI says, then bring it to the teacher, get some clarification, and go from there. The teacher should always have the final say as of 2025, but who knows, maybe in a few years' time, that will change.
Okay, I'm going to ask the next question. So, how can tutors and tutoring businesses protect their business in the AI world?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I think that tutoring businesses should be able to protect themselves in the AI world by embracing AI. Personally, I think AI is a magical tool at this point in time. Like, it's just something, and it's not going to go away, right? It's going to get better. It's going to get, in fact, really, really good in 5-10 years' time. And we just have to learn how to use it even better, right? At the end of the day, it is a tool, right? It's a tool in 2025 where we can use to emancipate ourselves from doing all the difficult tasks in the workplace. And I think this is something that teachers should be teaching their students so that they can become, the future workers in an AI world, right? They should be able to, draft letters, draft emails, draft arguments and essays, and do their thinking with AI and be able to use it well. Because, at the end of the day, your boss doesn't really care if you wrote something with AI. They only care if what you wrote made sense and can be actionable and be used to provide good work, right? So as long as we can provide good work, it doesn't matter how it was done. Similarly, I think I mentioned this a few weeks ago when I talked about like considering the AI as the graphics calculator for English. But yeah, I think this applies a lot, right? Where we're talking about a solution which will essentially, fast pace learning into the 2030s. And if you've got a tool like that these days, you have to embrace it. You just have to embrace it.
So that's how they protect their businesses, by just using it in their lessons that they deliver, encouraging their students to use it. And because they're doing that and still providing the mentorship and every other benefit they have over the AI, that is how they're going to be protecting their business going forwards.
Yeah, I mean, I think there should be a hybrid approach. You should have a non-AI component where you're teaching all the hard skills in terms of doing all the planning, especially in English, right? I'm assuming this is mainly in English, by the way. So it's a non-AI component where you do the planning, you write an essay, and you sort of work on it like that. And then you also have another version where you have AI, and you have all the benefits that you get with AI, and you utilize that as well. So then we can get the best of both worlds.
Okay, I'm going to go on to the last question now. This one's more of a ethical, social question. So what role will AI play in increasing or reducing educational inequalities?
I personally think AI is the great leveler when it comes to educational inequality. AI is essentially a basically free tool that is a super genius that everyone can access as long as they have internet. Right? It doesn't matter if you live in a favela in Brazil or if you live on the outskirts of the Sahara Desert. As long as you have internet, you basically have a teacher that is smarter than any teacher that you've had in school in terms of hard skills, and can give you great sort of advice and tips if you know how to use it well, right? And I think we're going to see in the next 5 to 10 years a lot of people who sort of self-train themselves and self-learn literally with an AI, right? Maybe basically from scratch onwards, right? Like an entire curriculum. I think as long as you're somewhat literate and you pull yourself to a primary school level, you can use AI and basically, get yourself to a level where, you're basically like a high school graduated student. If you're willing to put in the effort and willing to do the energy as well. Because look, say what you want about AI, that has biases, it's not very good, whatever. And AI is still a lot better than a textbook, right? And it's heaps better than having no teacher, right? Or even having a teacher that isn't very good. So we're talking about a situation where you can have, basically very, very poor people or in really bad situations, to have a teacher who can basically, give them a pretty decent sort of understanding of things without really paying that much money. Yeah. And I think, we're going to see people who are trained or who have taught themselves through AI. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really good time. And I think as we go out throughout the last 10, 20 years, we've seen that access to education is getting lower, right? Like anyone basically can give themselves an education by just watching YouTube videos and sort of learning, learning through free resources like Khan Academy, etc. And I think with AI, it's even more crazy because, it can speak different languages, right? So if you want to learn English, if you want to learn maths, right, and you don't even speak English, doesn't matter, right? You can type Vietnamese, you can type, Arabic, whatever it is. And even if you're from a very disadvantaged background, as long as you know the tools to use, which is ChatGPT, which is, Llama, whatever it is, it's just a simple matter of having the energy and having the purpose. And if you're willing to put in the effort, you can probably teach yourself to go through high school or even do an undergrad unofficially in terms of content-wise, just with AI, and it's the great leveler.
And I imagine also something I'm thinking about more locally, just in Australia, when we went to school, 9 a.m., 3 p.m., there was, lunch breaks and recess breaks. And then in between that, you had access to a teacher, right? But then you went home and you didn't have access to a teacher unless, like, your parents or whatever paid for a tutoring access or something like that.
Yeah.
And now everyone does have access to a tutor 24/7 if they know how to use it. So that's also, I guess, an inequality leveler for the people that never had.
Yeah. And it's free.
It is.
Yeah. You don't need to pay $100 an hour or whatever it is. You pay $0 an hour.
Doesn't mean it's as good, but it is a bit of a leveler.
Yes. But I mean, look, having an AI is an order of magnitude better than having no teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I think, a lot of the times you've got to consider things in terms of the alternative. And I think for a lot of students, the equation is I either use AI or I have no teacher or I have to rely on a textbook. And I think it's a pretty easy sort of thing to see that AI is better.
Yeah.
There's still an argument in terms of, is AI better than a teacher? Well, maybe not yet. But is AI better than no teacher? Well, 100% hands down, it is better than no teacher. Fantastic. Well, to finish off the podcast, we have our sort of section in terms of explaining what we learned this week. And I think, Riley, it's your turn this week. Would you like to share what you learned?
This week, this is more of a technical thing for AI. But, the DeepSeek 1 model that came out in February 2025. It came out and there was a lot of breakthroughs technically that they did, to be honest, that shocked the industry. And, I learned about those breakthroughs, how they technically were done, on the programming side, how they went past the NVIDIA CUDA libraries and went lower down out of necessity, really, because they didn't have the best NVIDIA chips due to export controls. And that was very interesting to me, that as someone who's like very interested in engineering and how, the technology works in the world that we're using right now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the real learning here is that necessity takes you to another level, right? Yeah. Because they had to do it, because they were forced to do it, then they did it. It reminds me a lot like, I know this is a bit out of topic, but Sun Tzu had in his Art of War book, he's got this thing about death ground, where if you're on death ground, that means you have the ocean behind you and you have to succeed, then you succeed because you don't have any other option, or at the very least you fight to the end. And I think this is a very good example where, you have to do it, otherwise you would fail, and they have done it. So I guess the learning is, if we put ourselves in a situation where we're somewhat like that.
Resource constrained. Something good may come out of it.
Yeah, something good may come out of it, exactly. Fantastic. Well, I really appreciate you guys listening in on another week. Please like our socials and we'll see you next week.